last time I was with you. My name's Ann Baker and I work at Extension doing basically professional development. So things related to teaching and learning and professional development. And today we're going to talk about listening skills, which is a little bit of a tricky topic to do over Zoom, but we're going to do the best we can and hopefully learn some good strategies or are able to reflect a little bit on what type of listener you are and what type of listener maybe you want to try to be instead of how you are right now. So to get started, let's do some introductions. So to just order the introductions, go ahead and open up the chat and type your name into the chat. So for example, I'll type my name in because I just did intros for myself. Awesome. Okay, so as you're typing your name in your chat, that's the order. I'm going to have you guys unmute and just introduce yourself to the group. Just your name, maybe where you're joining us from, and just, I think that's it. I think we just need names and maybe, where you're joining from, and that would be good. So we will start with the next person on the list would be Brooke.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brooke Bowman. I'm the district administrator at the Mecosta Conservation District, which is located in Big Rapids, Michigan.
Keely?
I am Keely Kucher from Lenawee County. I am the conservation technician.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christina Corral. I'm with MSU Extension. I'm a statewide soil health and cover crop educator, and I'm here to assist Ian.
Sarah Hudeman from Misaki Conservation District, the outreach coordinator.
Nick Mashinsky, Conservation Specialist at the Washtenaw County Conservation District.
I'm Kristen Cornell. I'm the meat technician covering Mecosta and Montcalm County.
I'm Jacob Hartman. I'm the watershed technician at Chippewa-Luce-Mackinac Conservation District.
Marquita Mullen. I'm a special project technician at CLMCD.
Is Emma out there, or maybe she's having a problem unmuting? And I think we skipped John as well, if John wants to chime in.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm John Switzer. I'm the Conservation Programs Manager with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Thank you.
Yep. All right, if Emma's not getting her tech working, maybe Donna can jump in next.
I'm Donna Caden, and I'm a conservation specialist at the Shiawassee Conservation District in Owasso.
Okay, and Hannah's having audio issues as well. Okay, so I guess we will just get started with that. So because this is a topic that we're going to actually use some breakout rooms and do some things. I know some of you don't have video cameras. So what I'm going to try to do is put you all in breakout groups for these activities so that at least some of you in the room have a video camera basically for what we're doing, and you'll understand why, with time when you're in there. So for now, if you do not have a video camera, what I want you to do is where you see your name in the little tile, if you hover over it, you should get 3 little dots. And if you click on them, you can click on rename. Okay, so I'm going to do that with mine. And then what I'm going to do, it'll say enter a new name below. Just put a 1 in front of your name if you have no video. If you have video, you can totally, totally ignore doing this. So does that make sense?
And real quick, Emma, if you want to, in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen where you see the microphone that's mute, unmute, there's a little up arrow right next to that. And you're going to have a box appear. If you click that, sometimes it helps to make sure that your same as system for select a microphone is selected, as well as your speaker. If that doesn't work, if you see that one of those options, either your microphone or your speaker, you recognize one of those audio devices you've used in the past, make sure that they're check marked, but that might be a good way to check your audio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
If you're still having problems, Ashley, if they want to put in the chat, just send it directly to you or I. Maybe we can help them walk through to fix their audio.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so we'll get as many of you up and rolling as we can. Some of you might end up being more observers in some of the group works if we have the problems like this, but you'll still be able to participate and do something as an observer. So all will not be lost. All right. So right now, to begin, you can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. What are some bad habits when listening? What makes somebody a bad listener? Christine is saying not looking at somebody, so no eye contact, looking at their phone or other distractions, poor eye contact. Anything else? Eager to jump in before the other person is done speaking. Oh God, yes, right. Interrupting, very much related to that last one. Chiming in with their own story instead of acknowledging theirs. All right, so kind of hijacking the conversation or focusing on what you're going to say next in the conversation rather than listening to the person. Yeah, I think I might have done this a few times with, with my partner, but oh, we all do it. Okay, right. So for this activity, I want to make sure you know how to use your reactions button in Zoom. And so if you see the black bar, that's usually at the bottom of your screen, although you can, sometimes it's floating. There's a little happy face. And when you click on it, you have reactions. So I'm wondering how many of you would say that they are a good listener? So do you think that you are a good listener? Go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you think you're a good listener. Couple of you, all right. And then how many would say that if I asked your best friend or your partner, whoever you're closer to, that you're a good listener? Like, would other people say that you're a good listener? Nobody's raising their hand. Interesting. Okay, John is and Donna. Okay, so we've got a couple. Right, so sometimes what we think about ourselves isn't necessarily what other people think. And actually there's some stats I'll put in later on, but basically they've done some research and it shows that the vast majority of people in a workplace think that they're a better listener than their colleagues. Well, statistically, that's impossible, right? That everybody thinks that they're the better listener than their colleagues because some of them just are wrong. There's no way that that can happen. All right, for this part, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 minute because I've got to share a different screen, but we're going to listen to a video in a second. Let me just get out of here. And the video talks about different kinds of listeners. So there's going to be 5 different people that are doing mini skits. And I want you to think as you're watching it, what type of listener do you think you most often are? Now, I know that it can change with context and things like that. But as you listen, again, think of the different kind of listeners they're talking about and think about which one you think you're the most guilty of being like. So I'm going to do another share screen here, share the sound. Let me just make sure it's working. Did you guys hear that little sound? I just want to make sure you can hear.
We can hear it.
Awesome. Okay.
Good listeners are good listeners, but they're not all the same. Like our personalities, our listening profiles can be very different, and it's important to know which type of listener you are. Let's examine some people who are listening. You know what you want out of your team, don't you?
Absolutely.
And from what I've seen, you like to set people's tasks for them, manage them pretty closely.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
No?
No. I'm good at stepping away. Good. Yeah. I don't micromanage.
Sulin, your team has had some issues lately, right? Time management, lack of focus.
You know, my team is great. We had an offsite event last week. Everyone was so pumped.
But the lack of focus, the late deliveries?
When you have an event like that, it's like a chance to recalibrate, right?
Was that scheduling issue a concern for you, Jack?
Did you hear about Mike's deal? Blew the old numbers away.
But the schedule, your schedule.
The thing about schedules is, you think Mike's worried about schedules? You know, one time
schedules wouldn't be a problem if we didn't have to use the new process.
But I thought the process.
It's the process, believe me.
Sulin, what do you think?
Sorry, what?
See what I mean? Let's consider these different types of listeners. When you're acting super confident, like Sophia, you tend to listen, but resist others' opinions because you're so sure of your own. Then there are those who are subtly directive, like Sulin, who asks irrelevant questions or steers the conversation where she wants it to go. You may think it's better to be self-concerned, like Jack, but that's not ideal either, because self-concerned listeners tend to think there are only two modes of conversation, talking and waiting to talk. They think more about what they're going to say next than listen to what's actually being said. And they only tell stories or give examples that suit their perspective. Then there's the solver of problems who tends to be, well, pushy. Like Jason, you jump in with a solution or an answer before you've even heard the problem. The last type of listener is perpetually distracted, or multitasking, probably both. People who are somewhere else listeners give all the signals they're paying attention, but in fact, they don't even hear what's being said at all, or they're, at best, only half listening. Recognizing what type of listener you are is the first step to becoming a better one. So do some self-examination to ensure you don't get in the way of active listening.
Okay, let me just get out of this screen. Get back to where we were. So, do another share screen. Okay, so here, and I know we're not in full screen, here we go. Yeah, there we go. All right, so here is a summary of the type of listeners that they talked about, right? The super confident one that knows everything and is just overly confident and sure that they're always right. The second one, she was redirecting. So basically she was asking about the schedule and she kept talking and her team having problems. She said, oh, you should have been at this event with my team. They were great. So she was just steering the conversation where she wanted it to go. The third one, self-concerned. So he basically had two modes of interacting, right? He was either talking or he was waiting to talk, and he was trying to change the topic and, go back to talking about this fabulous guy, Mike. So he was completely not listening. He was just redirecting the conversation. The next one was a problem solver. So he just jumped right in with the solution and didn't even listen to the problem. And in fact, even interrupted her when she tried to clarify it. And then the last one, that's the person that would always be on their cell phone or something like that. They're totally distracted. And maybe in some cases they act like they're listening or give signals, but they're just somewhere else completely, right? So those are the different kinds of listening, kind of bad habits. And, we're not always falling into one of these categories, but often we have one that we normally do more than others. I know that, for example, I like to solve problems. I'm analytical. I'm guilty of that. But I'm wondering, what do you guys think? Which one do you fall into? This is an anonymous poll. Don't worry, we're not going to see how you answer it. But I'm just curious from the group, which of these bad habits do you think you have? All right, interesting. So let me end the poll and share the results. Lots of problem solvers out there. I am not surprised at all. And then the second place would be people that either redirect the conversation back to where they want it or they're distracted. I can totally understand being distracted, especially in the days of Zoom. I know that when I'm in a Zoom training, it's so hard for me to focus and not open my email, but this is a listening training, so try to listen. and not do that. And then just one person saying that they basically are self-concerned. They want to take over the conversation. So, right. And we're all guilty of these things. There's no shame in it. But we're going to talk about some different ways and strategies to try to get away from some of these behaviors during this session. All right. Come here, back to mine. So Julian Treasure is an awesome speaker. We're going to see if it plays straight from, actually, I'm going to reshare it and make sure it works. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I don't think I had share sound on. All right. Okay. So we're going to listen to a short, I think it's about 7 minutes. It's a mini TED Talk by Julian Treasures. And as you're listening, I want you to just think about which of the ideas he mentioned do you think is the most interesting for you to try. So he's going to talk about the nature of listening, but then he's going to give you 5 different strategies, like 5 different little daily exercises that you can do as a listener to make you a better listener. So while you're listening, I want you to just kind of think about which of those are you actually likely to do. So let me test the sound. Did you guys hear it?
Sounds
Yes?
good.
Good. All right.
We are losing our listening. We spend roughly 60% of our communication time listening, but we're not very good at it. We retain just 25% of what we hear. Now, not you, not this talk, but that is generally true. Let's define listening as making meaning from sound. It's a mental process, and it's a process of extraction. We use some pretty cool techniques to do this. One of them is pattern recognition. So in a cocktail party like this, if I say, David, Sarah, pay attention, some of you just sat up. We recognize patterns to distinguish noise from signal, and especially our name. Differencing is another technique we use. If I left this pink noise on for more than a couple of minutes, you would literally cease to hear it. We listen to differences, we discount sounds that remain the same. And then there is a whole range of filters. These filters take us from all sound down to what we pay attention to. Most people are entirely unconscious of these filters, but they actually create our reality in a way because they tell us what we're paying attention to right now. I'll give you one example of that. Intention is very important in sound, in listening. When I married my wife, I promised her that I would listen to her every day as if for the first time. Now that's something I fall short of on a daily basis. But it's a great intention to have in a relationship. But that's not all. Sound places us in space and in time. If you close your eyes right now in this room, you're aware of the size of the room from the reverberation and the bouncing of the sound off the surfaces. And you're aware of how many people are around you because of the micro noises you're receiving. And sound places us in time as well, because sound always has time embedded in it. In fact, I would suggest that our listening is the main way that we experience the flow of time from past to future. So, sonority is time and meaning, a great quote. I said at the beginning, we're losing our listening. Why did I say that? Well, there are a lot of reasons for this. First of all, we invented ways of recording. First, writing, then audio recording, and now video recording as well. The premium on accurate and careful listening has simply disappeared. Secondly, the world is now so noisy, with this cacophony going on visually and auditorily, it's just hard to listen. It's tiring to listen. Many people take refuge in headphones, but they turn big public spaces like this, shared soundscapes, into millions of tiny little personal sound bubbles. In this scenario, nobody's listening to anybody. We're becoming impatient. We don't want oratory anymore, we want sound bites. And the art of conversation is being replaced, dangerously, I think, by personal broadcasting. I don't know how much listening there is in this conversation, which is sadly very common, especially in the UK. We're becoming desensitized. Our media have to scream at us with these kind of headlines in order to get our attention. And that means it's harder for us to pay attention to the quiet, the subtle, the understated. This is a serious problem that we're losing our listening. This is not trivial, because listening is our access to understanding. Conscious listening always creates understanding. And only without conscious listening can these things happen. A world where we don't listen to each other at all is a very scary place indeed. So I'd like to share with you 5 simple exercises, tools you can take away with you to improve your own conscious listening. Would you like that? Good. The first one is silence. Just 3 minutes a day of silence is a wonderful exercise to reset your ears and to recalibrate so that you can hear the quiet again. If you can't get absolute silence, go for quiet. That's absolutely fine. Second, I call this the mixer. So even if you're in a noisy environment like this, and we all spend a lot of time in places like this, listen in the coffee bar to how many channels of sound can I hear? How many individual channels in that mix am I listening to? You can do it in a beautiful place as well, like a lake. How many birds am I hearing? Where are they? Where are those ripples? It's a great exercise for improving the quality of your listening. Third, this exercise I call savoring, and this is a beautiful exercise. It's about enjoying mundane sounds. This, for example, is my tumble dryer. It's a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I love it. Or just try this one on for size. Wow. So mundane sounds can be really interesting if you pay attention. I call that the hidden choir. It's around us all the time. The next exercise is probably the most important of all of these. If you just take one thing away, this is listening positions. The idea that you can move your listening position to what's appropriate to what you're listening to. This is playing with those filters. You remember I gave you those filters at the beginning? It's starting to play with them as levers, to get conscious about them and to move to different places. These are just some of the listening positions or scales of listening positions that you can use. There are many. Have fun with that. It's very exciting. And finally, an acronym. You can use this in listening, in communication. If you're in any one of those roles, and I think that probably is everybody who's listening to this talk. The acronym is RASA, which is the Sanskrit word for juice or essence. And rasa stands for receive, which means pay attention to the person, appreciate, making little noises like, oh, okay. Summarize, the word so is very important in communication, and ask questions afterwards. Now, sound is my passion, it's my life. I wrote a whole book about it, so I live to listen. That's too much to ask for most people. But I believe that every human being needs to listen consciously in order to live fully. Connected in space and in time to the physical world around us, connected in understanding to each other, not to mention spiritually connected, because every spiritual path I know of has listening and contemplation at its heart. That's why we need to teach listening in our schools as a skill. Why is it not taught? It's crazy. And if we can teach listening in our schools, we can take our listening off that slippery slope to that dangerous, scary world that I talked about and move it to a place where everybody is consciously listening all the time, or at least capable of doing it. Now, I don't know how to do that, but this is TED. And I think the TED community is capable of anything. So I invite you to connect with me, connect with each other, take this mission out, and let's get listening taught in schools and transform the world in one generation to a conscious listening world, a world of connection, a world of understanding, and a world of peace. Thank you for listening to me today.
All right, so I love Julian Treasure. He does a lot on things related to listening and communication in general, and I don't know, I love listening to him talk. So he had some different ideas, right? I'm curious that if you think about, oh, hold on, that's wrong poll, gotta find it. There we go. I'm curious if you think about the different ideas he came up with, which of these do you think that after this training, you're willing to try, that you'd actually do, right? Because some of them, I know people are like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. So go ahead and let me know what you think you would try. So it's interesting, nobody's choosing the listening positions. That one is actually, I think, in a professional level important because it's basically deciding before you listen how you're going to listen. Are you going to be an active listener? Are you going to try to remain objective? Are you going to try to empathize and be more emotional? Like what is going to be kind of like your strategy or your underlying way of listening? So if you think about that way, then I think it's something that probably people do more than they think they do naturally, but it's useful. I like the idea of the mixer. And actually, after I heard this talk, I used it. I sat in my quiet house and I listened to everything outside. And for me, it wasn't just an exercise in becoming a better listener, but it was also like a mindfulness practice, which is really useful to ground yourself. One thing we're going to talk about in a little bit is the importance of leaving emotion out of listening. As soon as you empathize too much with the person and become emotional, you tend to not hear the message quite as well because you're emotionally vested. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, here's the results of what you guys how you answered it, just in case you're curious. So yeah, lots of people interested in rasa, savoring 3 minutes a day. All right, we will stop sharing that. All right, back to here. So, come on, oh, it's doing bad things. Here we go. So some listening stats, just to frame this a little bit more. Here's something that's really important. So we listen more than we read. So it's natural that we're gonna have more miscommunications from listening than reading, but research shows that actually 60% of misunderstandings are from bad listening. So that's kind of a lot because it could be from cultural differences. It could be from just not being clear. It could be from not hearing. And it can be from a lot of different things, right? But 60% from bad listening. This was a research I mentioned earlier that if you ask employees, do you think you're a better communicator than your colleague? They all think they're the best communicator. So that's very interesting because obviously that's not statistically possible. Research that shows that people only listen at 25% of their potential. So the other 75% of the time, they're not putting 100% into their listening. That just bringing up the point that you have to make it your goal to be a better listener and you have to really focus on it. And that focus alone is going to make a big difference. And that we spend about 45% of our communication time listening and 30% talking. So we spend the most talking and the least listening. So I'm just wondering which one of these do you guys think, does anybody have an idea on which of these is the most telling or the most surprising to you? Any thoughts on that? No? Quiet group today? The last one? Yeah, we spend more time listening than anything else, for sure. The third bullet's most surprising. Yeah, I agree. Brooke, that was the one that I was like, oh my damn. I was like, wow, that's really bad. Like, even if you're above average listener, even if you're listening at 50% of your potential, making you way better than average, you're still only listening at 50% of your potential. Like, let that sink in. To me, that was pretty interesting. So if this is all true, it all shows that we don't pay enough attention to listening. As Julian Treasure pointed out, we don't teach listening skills in schools. We just assume people are better listeners. But let's think about this poll. So think about in workshops that you've been to, training you've been to, your schooling, like anything educational you've ever done, which of the topics shown here have you actually attended training on? And you can, oh, this was supposed to be select all, so this isn't going to work as well, but that's all right. Let's see. People are still answering. Okay, we'll give it 1 more minute. Or less than 1 more minute, 10 more seconds. Okay, so if you look at the results, and I knew that it would be answered this way, that's why I put this in here. It's kind of a leading question. The majority of people, usually more than half, have attended some type of training on giving better presentations or on speaking or something like that. Yet, as the stats just showed, we don't speak as much as we listen, and we're not good at listening. So this is just, it's a little bit of food for thought that culturally, we place a lot of emphasis on these ideas that help you express yourself, okay? How to write better, how to be a better public speaker, give better presentations, which will be our next training together that you can attend in a few weeks, or how to resolve conflict. Again, that's about speaking and communicating. But yet, I'm wondering, how many of you previous to today have ever been to a workshop on listening? Has anybody? If you have, unmute yourself or put your name in the chat because I'm curious. Sarah has, awesome. Christina has, yeah, I actually have, but only a couple names, right? So yeah, we don't, as a society, especially in our culture, I think maybe more so than some other cultures, we really don't place much of a premium on listening. We place it more on, oh, Sarah says my community listens out of Midland. Okay, cool. Yeah, you'll have to share that with me after, Sarah. I'd be interested if you would stay behind and tell me a little bit more about that. That'd be interesting. But yeah, we don't, basically my main idea here is we ignore it. Okay. All right. So how to show that you're listening, right? We're going to do this actually together. And I'm going to also, in case you want to participate by writing and you can't unmute, what I'd like you to do is to go to this Jamboard, and I'm actually going to go to the Jamboard now. I'm going to stop sharing and go there so that as we are answering this together and doing this activity together, we can all see everything that other people are putting in here. Okay, so what are some good listening habits? Go ahead and lay one on me, you guys. And maybe Ashley or, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Eye contact.
Eye contact, great. And since I'm typing, if Ashley or Christina could read them out if they're coming in the chat, that's cool.
No problem. Jacob just said nodding.
Mm-hmm. And again, you all have the link to this. You can all be adding your own sticky notes if you want to do it that way as well. What else? All right, you guys, I've got ideas, but I'm hoping to get some of yours. How about paraphrasing? How about a very simple one of just focused attention? An example of that, if somebody comes into my office and they want to talk to me and I have my laptop open, it's really hard if they're standing on the other side of my laptop to not be like looking at my email if they're talking about something that takes a while. So something as simple as closing your laptop, taking your phone and flipping it over, you know, all these little things that you can do to just make sure you're focused. Okay, having an open mind, we have that one coming in.
Smiling,
yes.
and open facial expression.
Yeah, yeah. Smiling.
We also have limiting internal dialogue in the chat.
Okay, great. I can't spell, you guys. You get the idea. Limit dialogue. There we go. Great.
Little vocal
Okay.
cues.
What was that?
The chat is little vocal cues, okay, or yeah, or something like that, acknowledging your hearing.
Okay, vocal cues. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, well, that's a good list. And then if we look at these, a lot of these aren't even about talking. Okay, those two are talking. Paraphrasing is talking. All of these ones up here are basically nonverbal, right? So nonverbal communication is really important with listening. And that's one reason why with this, I sent out an email to people saying, if you have a video camera, try to use it. And how many people don't have a video camera? Because we're going to do some breakouts pretty soon. And a lot of them involve paying attention to nonverbals. So it's important. So that's one reason that I brought this up. And then we already talked a little bit about harmful listening habits. So we're going to actually, we're going to skip that part, but a lot of the harmful habits are basically the opposite of what are the good habits. So let me go back to here now. All right. All right, so now I want to talk about something. Well, you've heard of active listening, right? Just to preface this, what's active listening, just to kind of make sure you guys are all on the same page about what that is, because this takes active listening a step farther. Can somebody chime in and tell me what active listening is? Anyone? What's active listening?
I always think
All right,
of
so
it as,
yep.
I was thinking of it as internalizing what people are saying, not just hearing the words, but understanding and taking heart to what they're saying.
Yeah, so doing something. And in that case, it's interpreting, or it can be something as simple. So interpreting is part of it, but also showing that you're listening. So giving signals back to the other person, which you can do in a variety of ways. Eye contact, nodding, smiling, a lot of those things that we put up in the previous Jamboard are just things that you do when you're showing active listening. But I want to take that idea and extend it a little bit further. And this is what the literature calls right listening, which I had not heard about before that I started doing some digging into this topic, and I found it interesting. So right listening is, it takes those ideas further. So the first thing that it talks about is the idea of posture and tension, and the idea that when you're listening, especially if it's something that you know is going to be like an intense conversation, or maybe the person's going to talk a lot, or maybe it's going to be emotional, paying a lot of attention to the position that you're in, and then making sure that you're still. So not fidgeting, not rocking back and forth on your feet, not kind of looking around, but just being very intentional about your posture and making sure that you're in a still and comfortable posture. So something where you're not moving a lot and that you're comfortable, but you probably don't want to be lying back on the couch either. If they're a boring speaker, you might fall asleep. So paying attention to the posture and the tension. The second word of advice about this idea of right listening is trying to think about how they're feeling. So noticing their emotions, and not just what their emotions are, but thinking about why they're feeling that way. So somebody's talking to you and they're really worked up. Okay, you notice, first of all, you notice, wow, this person's really worked up. They're feeling emotional, they're agitated. And then trying to listen between the lines for why they're agitated. So paying that attention to what they're saying, but the why beneath it. And that will help you be a better listener. It also is worth saying that if you're having an emotional conversation with somebody, you don't want to mirror them. If you're talking to somebody and they're not upset and they're not happy with what you're telling them, and they're doing this and they're standing up and they got their hands on their hips. Oh, I just faded. If they're doing stuff like that, it's easy to feed off of their frustration and their anger and to mirror their body language, but you want to be really, really deliberate, going back to that first one, to not mirror their body language and to try to just stay kind of calm and chill and relaxed with your body posture and not mirror back to them any emotions that they have, because that intensifies. When you mirror something back to somebody, you're feeding into whatever that they're feeling. And so that idea of feelings is the next little bullet here. And this was an interesting concept. So it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but you don't want to actually empathize. You do want to notice and perceive their emotions. You want to think about where their emotions are coming from, but you don't want to feel the same emotions that they do. And you also don't want to feel the opposite emotion. Like if it's something confrontational, you don't want to try to take the other side and like have the opposing emotions that are kind of conflicting it. So you want to stay as neutral as possible. And the reason why is, as soon as you apply emotions to your own listening, you've stopped being objective, and then you're starting to cloud what is being said by them with your own emotions and your own thoughts. Yeah, it's just this idea of noticing emotions, but not becoming the same as they are in their feelings. And it's really easy for us to listen to something and just apply like our emotional feelings to it. Like, for example, if I tell you a story where I went to a crowded music festival and I ate hush puppies and they were fried and greasy, and then I sat in a hot crowded tent listening to some really loud country music, and all the benches were close to each other, and you know, my ears were throbbing. If I tell you that story, your emotions will depend on your personality and maybe your perception of music festivals or country music or being overheated and hot weather. So one person might hear that story and they think, oh, well, that was a terrible experience. And the other person might hear it and be like, oh, that was a great experience. And that's because they're bringing their emotions to it, and whether or not sitting around in a hot crowded tent eating fried food and listening to really loud country music, is that your idea of a good time or not, right? So just that whole idea that you can very easily project your emotions onto somebody else's words. So remaining objective, not doing that. And then the last one is really, really simple. And this is a lot what active listening talks about, but the idea of checking in on understanding and details with things like paraphrasing things back to them, or saying, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is blah, 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 blah. Or making sure you understand details by asking them clarifying questions and kind of digging more information out of them. So that's just that idea of right listening. And again, I think the most interesting part of this that most people haven't thought about before is the idea of trying to get under their emotions and see the why for their emotions, but not feeling the same emotion that they feel. So those are keys to listening. So we are going to practice and just notice good listening by going into breakout groups. Ashley, have you got great breakout group already formed?
We are ready.
They are ready. Awesome. So each of your group, you should have enough people in it that can use a microphone. And if you have your video cameras, it's really good to turn them on. So please do turn on your video cameras if you can. I know some of you might be in situations where you can't, but if you can, turn them on. So what you're going to do is you're going to designate, first of all, who in the group is going to talk, and you're going to pick a topic that you feel something about. So there's some ideas below, and we will share this screen with you to your breakout rooms. But you can also bring your own topic, that's fine. And then one person's going to listen, and I want you to practice your active listening skills, and practice, going back to this, practice like thinking about your posture and thinking about not feeling their emotion, but noticing their emotion. And then also remaining objective and checking in with understanding checks, like paraphrasing or summarizing back what they're saying. Okay, so that's what the listener is going to do. And then the observer, I just want you to kind of notice what's going on. So the observer is going to just kind of notice this conversation and notice what the listener is doing well or not doing well. And I'm actually going to send a checklist to you guys, if this works. Come on. Give me a second. Sorry, guys, got to pull it up. I should have had it on my desktop. Now I'm having to go through my files to get it. Okay. Here we go. Hopefully It came through in the chat. You have it?
We do.
Okay, so all of you can open this document up. This is kind of like a summary too of what we just talked about with this whole concept of right listening. But it's something for before you start talking for the observer to just read through it. And then as they're observing, kind of just make some notes. And you might not have something to say about every single category in this checklist. It's a guide. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be 100% used and completed. That's fine. But that's what you guys are going to do. And then after one person is a speaker, I want you to switch and have at least 2 people in your group speak. I know that in some cases, you might be environments where you don't want to be the speaker because maybe it's noisy and disruptive for you to speak where you're at, but hopefully at least 2 of you can do that. And then we're going to come back as a group. So I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes to do this and then bring you back in. So right now we're going to send you to breakout rooms. And let's see.
I can go ahead and open them if you're ready.
Yep. Yeah. Can you open them? And there should be an option to share the screen to the breakout room so they can still see the slide if possible. It might be after you send them to the
I was going to
breakout
say, I
room.
think
We'll
it's
figure it out.
afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah,
open
we'll
them
figure it out,
before I-
Ashley. So go ahead and send them, then we'll
Okay.
make sure it's broadcasting. I think room 3, we've got to move John. Oh, no, there's 2 people in it now. We need 3 people in a room.
Yeah, did people move? Because I had 3.
Let's move Christina, maybe.
That's so weird because there was never a room with just 2 people. Oh,
I just moved Christina. Let's see if she.
there we go. You're still muted, Anne. I don't know if you were.
Oh, I'm talking to myself, but
Okay, good. All right. I just, if it was for me, I'm
did
like,
it let you? Did it let you share the screen to them somehow?
so I can broadcast a message.
Oh, I see it. It's shared
Yep.
to breakout rooms.
Yep, but I think you as the host only have that ability with breakouts because I left you as the main host.
Okay, I did it. Let's hope it
Perfect.
worked. It should work. Oh yeah.
should.
Okay. Cool. They keep coming up with all these great new Zoom things, and it's like every time I do it, I feel like I'm trying out something new and hoping it works. 'Cause, you know, the first time you use things, you don't.
I need to update, I think, mine for the second time this week because my video's been kind of delayed, which is weird. And then I also had set the polls for these as anonymous for our last one. And then I went back and turned off so that we could actually, I had another webinar where we were collecting pool information that we needed like actual names with information. And it
Right.
didn't change back. It
Oh,
was still
geez.
anonymous. And I'm like, what is going on here? Luckily,
It's-
it wasn't the
yeah.
end of the world, but I'm like, I swear I changed that and it wasn't checked. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right, let's see.
When
at
it
11
works, it's
o'clock.
great.
This group is so quiet. I don't like it when they keep videos off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. People are, I think they're used to Zoom meetings with their like normal small groups or small staff meetings and things, but then with strangers, they're like, no, I'll pass.
Right. When are we recording this?
I'm gonna pause it now.
You guys, I noticed in Zoom when I put you into breakout rooms that the chat disappeared. Did your file that I send you disappear after that? Because it should not have, but maybe there's a bug going on. No, you still had it?
It worked. Yeah, it worked.
Okay. Because I had actually heard that there is something going on weird with the chat rooms like that. And I was wondering if that had just happened or not, because my chat was suddenly cleared out. And I was like,
It does clear out. I always copy and paste before I send people to Zoom rooms, just in case I lose it all in my recording.
It's not supposed to. It's a bug.
Right.
But hopefully they fix that soon. Okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad at least the attachment stayed with you guys, because I'm like, oh, that would be bad. So I'm wondering if we could hear from one of the groups, first from one of the speakers, and whether or not they felt like they were heard. And then with the observer, was there anything you just noticed that was done well? We'll pick on room 1 first. Donna, Brooke, Jacob, Sarah.
So our group, Brooke told the first story about upcoming vacation that I have to Vegas, and Sarah was our listener, and then Donna was the observer, and Jacob also added some input in, and then the second speaker was Donna talking about her vacation, and I was nominated as the observer, and then we kind of all went through the questionnaire together, that PDF. So I'm not sure if that was the correct way.
That's fine.
But what we found out was, for the first speaker, my trip to Vegas, Sarah seemed very intrigued. I knew that she was listening because she was trying to I guess kind of relate to my concerns about leaving my son at home while I go on a week-long vacation. But we noticed that she didn't ask any questions. So that's something that we corrected the second go around. When I was listening to Donna talk about her upcoming vacation, I kind of reciprocated and made questions such as, oh, I heard you said that you haven't been on a vacation with your kids in a long time. When's the last time you guys have all been on a vacation together? So kind of showing her that I was listening that way.
Cool.
But all in all, it was a good group discussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things about doing things like this is it's not rocket science. I mean, all of these things that are on that list, you probably could have come up with most of them on your own as being things to do when you're listening. But it's whether or not before you have a conversation, whether or not you're checking in with yourself and thinking, let's pretend we were in a little listening workshop and we're using the checklist, right? I know that as I was putting together like this PowerPoint and the activities, I was basically, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend, and I realized I was interrupting him and not doing the very things that I'm supposed to be like talking to people about. So it's just really about consciousness raising more than anything else to become a better listener. How about, let's hear from at least one other group. Does any of either group 2 or group 3 want to chime in about your experience? What went well? What did you see and hear? Crickets. Okay, I'm not going to force.
I was observing, and I can talk
Thank you.
about our group. What made our group easy is that they both had shared experiences. That they knew they both had similar situations. They were talking about vacations also, and they both had young kids, and they did a vacation without the kids and the differences. So they could really communicate by a lot of facial expressions and smiling and laughing because they see the same thing, they feel the same thing, and that makes it easier when you're having discussions or when you're listening and talking, if you share the experiences.
Yeah.
Now, if it was opposite, where one didn't have a clue what the other one was going through, it would be harder.
Right. The rapport matters. Nice observations. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about paraphrasing. We started to touch on it, but we didn't go very deep into it. So the whole idea of paraphrasing, just to review the concept, which you probably already know this, is when somebody's talking and there's a pause in the conversation to take that opportunity to say back to them what they've said, not like a parrot, not repeating it back word for word, but like saying, okay, so you're feeling this way, or oh, okay, so to summarize, you want this, or something like that. And then you kind of, as the listener, you look at them and you wait for them to be like, yeah, right. And they give you some kind of confirmation, or maybe they don't. Maybe they're like, no, that's not what I said at all. And then it kind of goes back into the loop. So we all probably can figure out this is how to paraphrase, but then doing it is a whole nother game. So there's different language that you can use when you're paraphrasing. And so we're going to actually practice some paraphrasing using some of this language. And I will send this slide out to you guys. Let me see if I can send another. Well, I'm going to do it actually in a minute after I go through this. Sorry, I'm scattered. But yeah, so there's different functions of paraphrasing. And the first one is the most obvious one, which is just to like make sure you're getting it. It's to show this is what you're saying, right? And you're concerned about, you would like to see, you feel badly about, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the most basic one that people, I think, know how to do, and they usually do it. Now, in your jobs, when you're out there talking to farmers, I don't have your job, so I don't necessarily have your reality, but I can imagine a lot of it is like either convincing them to do something or troubleshooting or things like that. So if somebody's rambling and they're trying to express themselves, but sometimes people aren't very coherent, right? When they're just having a conversation. So that's where the summarize or organize skills come in. So just take a second and read the ones here. These are things that you can say to somebody just to show that you're listening. You have 2 goals here, things like that. And then the third way to paraphrase is even more complicated. And I don't think it's something we'll really get into practicing in this session, because you really need some elaborate role playing, and it's much better done face to face. But again, this is something that might be useful when you're talking to people and they're kind of rambling and they're not expressing themselves in a very coherent way, and they're giving a lot of information that's jumbled all over the place. But when we're talking about shifting levels of abstraction, it's going from the examples that they're giving you and the little pieces of detail, and then kind of shifting up to make a conclusion about all those little pieces, right? So your belief is, your value is, your goal of doing this is, your assumption in all of these actions and details is blah, 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 or it's taking the little details and trying to pull out the big concept from it, right? And then the other one would be the opposite. It's when people are like, well, I just believe blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, well, so as an example of that, this. So in that third category, it's taking it from the little details to the big picture, or from the big picture to the little details, if that makes sense. And again, that's more conceptual at this point. I don't think we can practice it during this session, because the session's just not long enough. But it's things to keep in mind. And I will send you a sentence stems handout that has this stuff in it. Let me see if that goes through. There we go. Okay. All right. So that just has the information that was on the slide in here. So we're going to go back into our groups just for 5 minutes, and we're going to practice some paraphrasing. And you're going to choose one of these 2 role plays. So Christina and I can demonstrate it. Christina, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we'll choose situation 1. And so Christina, you're pretty much annoyed because I missed a deadline and it made you look bad. So you're like, oh my God, Anne, I can kill you. You made me look bad. So what she's going to do is she's going to role play that. And I'm going to be the listener that's hearing her frustration. And I'm going to try to use at least a couple paraphrasing strategies. You don't have to use all of these. Like I said, these last 2 categories are kind of hard, so that's fine. But let's go ahead and try that, Christina.
Okay. You missed your deadline. Now I am the one that has to deal with our supervisor being angry and upset. And I don't know what to do because you're the one doing it, not me. So what am I supposed to do?
Okay, so you feel like the supervisor took it out on you, that I missed it and it infected you? Is that what you're concerned about here, Christina?
That and the fact that I can't go on if you don't get your deadline met. You have to do this before I can do my next step.
Okay, so you'd like me to basically take a more prioritized approach to this and make sure I get this done soon. Like when would you need it done?
I need it done yesterday, but if you can get it done by Friday, then I can take it to our supervisor and then I can finish the project. But unless you get that done, I can't finish this project. And then I am the one that will be held responsible.
Okay, so what's really important to you is that I get it at least by Friday so that you don't look bad in front of our boss.
Then I have time over the weekend to get it done by Monday so he can have it.
Okay, so I see that you're very concerned about the deadline being missed and making you look bad. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Christina, great acting. So going back to these slides, what's here is pretty much what I sent you guys. And then you can choose another situation if you want in your groups, that's fine. I'm giving you 2 situations just so you have something. And these do not need to be long role plays. So I'm just going to put you in breakout rooms for 5 minutes. That should give you enough time for 2 different people to go because it doesn't have to be long. So either that situation with a missed deadline, or you could do this one that might be a little bit more specific to your contexts. Or if you have another idea that's simple to explain to your group, that's cool using it too. So we're going to do that. We're going to reopen the breakout rooms. Ashley, please. And we're just going to spend 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So yeah, what it is, we're not going to do a brief debrief because I want to jump to this last exercise because it's a fun way to demonstrate nonverbals and to really think about nonverbals and how easy it is to communicate nonverbally. So it's called wordless acting. We're going to go into our breakout rooms and you can have one person, like 2 people are going to be basically involved in the role play, okay, which there's a script for it. So 2 people are kind of acting out a script. And then the 3rd person, or maybe the 4th, if you have 4 in the room, because one of the rooms does, the 4th person is going to be basically observing. And I'm actually going to move somebody into room 2. Okay, so Christina and I are going to demonstrate it. And so this is called wordless acting. And it's because the 2 people reading the script, one of them is actually reading and one of them's just acting out their response. But before you begin the activity, the person who's acting out the responses, and in our demo in a minute, it will be me, they are going to have what I call a hidden emotion. So you're not going to say what your emotion is. But so Christina and I are going to act this out, and I am going to be the person that is B, and they're not going to actually speak. They're acting out with nonverbals, how they feel and what their response is. So I'm going to choose an emotion now, and we're going to get going to demonstrate this. So go ahead, Christina, you're A.
Have you seen my book, Ann? I can't remember where I put it. You know, the murder mystery, the one you borrowed? No, it's the one you borrowed. Look under your chair. Maybe you put it there. How long are you going to be? Forget it. I'll find it myself.
Okay.
Too late.
So I was expressing an emotion. Can anybody guess what it was?
It seemed like annoyed.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what you guys are going to do. We've got 8 minutes left, so we're going to take 7 minutes doing this. How's that? And I'm going to share I'll share this script to all the groups. wondering, were you able to guess the secret emotions? How did you do? Yeah. Okay, and probably people were like overacting a little bit to make sure the emotions were guessable, right? But I think it's a good demonstration on how easy it is to read somebody's nonverbals, which means that when you're listening, going back to that idea of trying to understand where the other person's coming from and understanding the why beneath their emotion and recognizing their emotion, but not mirroring it back to them or not expressing your own emotion back to them, just trying to remain as neutral as possible while still being engaged. Basically, the main ideas. Okay, well, we're pretty much done. So there was one last thing that I'm gonna skip, but I wanted to just make sure that if you knew that if you signed up for this, we changed the time, and you should have gotten an email. Did you guys get an email about this? Yes, no, maybe.
Nonverbal skills. Yes, no.
I got an email saying that it was rescheduled, but not the new time.
Okay. Okay. I'll make sure that it's sent out. Yeah, this was supposed to be last Tuesday. I had the stomach flu, you guys. I was like busy throwing up. Like I was like, I can push through this. And then I like threw up again. I'm like, no, I can't. I have to cancel it. So I'm really sorry about that. But yeah.
No, and if we could get maybe a broad email out for folks, because I
Yes.
know I had a conflict, so I didn't sign up, so I didn't get
Yep.
a notification that it got changed. So if we could
I will. I don't have the distribution list. Christina, do you have it or?
I don't, but
Okay.
Sarah would.
Okay, I'll make sure Sarah will. I'll make
Yeah,
sure
and we
Sarah
can get
gets
one
out.
sent out too, because we helped promote these as well, so we can get those sent out to our
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will. So I'm going to put this in the chat too for any of you that want it right here and now, and then I'll make sure an email goes out as well. Okay. But thank you, you guys. I see that we're 1 minute over, so I'm going to stop talking and let you all get back to your lives. Thanks for joining me. Sorry, the end was a little bit rushed, but hopefully you still got a couple strategies and tips and tricks to help you focus listening. But again, the biggest thing is to really just be really intentional about it and pretend when you're listening to somebody that you're in a listening workshop. That's, I think, my number one piece of advice. So thank you, everybody. Have a great Tuesday.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.